I would say that, you know how my approach is ready, fire, aim. David's more of a ready, aim, fire. And if there's probably either an acquisition or a change in a process or a new market or something that he's getting into, it will have been well thought out. He's quite a bit more cerebral than I am.
Well, I'm ready, aim.
But all right, pull the trigger.
Yeah, well thought out, though. Well thought out.
Yeah, so yeah.
All right, well, David and Jordan, welcome to the table. I got David Tyrolt here from Dunn Company and Jordan Carson, who is just starting right with you guys at Dunn Company, and Millikin wrestler. And so, Jordan, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience wrestling in college? Because, you know, I know Coach Burt, and we did a small NIL deal with you. And I've just gotten to know you over the last year.
Yeah.
Came and watched in the regionals over and right down here in Springfield to make a Springfield Center. And I have a little bit of experience with wrestling because my boys did, and I wrestled for a while. And I can't express to you enough. I respect and admire the work that wrestlers put in.
Yes.
And I also think it really ties in well with what your career path will probably look like because I don't think anybody outworks a wrestler. So I say you got a good hire here. But talk a little bit about Millikin, your wrestling experience before we talk about Dunn Company.
Well, I started off in junior college at a college called Triton College, and liked it there, but I had to move on to the next steps. And I met Coach Burt, and he kind of taught me into coming to Millikin.
Awesome.
And it was
a pretty good experience because I know it's a fairly new program that he started there.
So I think they were in their third year when I signed on to compete at Millikin, and it was this cool athletic facility, you know, especially for Division III.
Yeah.
Not many people could fit 4 mats in one facility.
It is
and
very
have
nice.
their own weightlifting facility, which was awesome as well. And once I saw that, I was like, you know, I gotta come here. And then Coach Burt's a really cool guy, very personable, likes to joke with you, make it a real family environment. And, you know, I just had to go there.
I love it.
But,
Now, is Millikin considered kind of an up-and-coming program as far as competitiveness in the Division III ranks?
Yeah. Wrestling, we won 3 conference championships in a row, so that really put us on the map. And we're real competitive with North Central, who's been kind of running the CCIW as far as football goes.
Sure.
They, got a few national titles or whatnot, but Millikin is definitely up and coming. And wrestling, also in women's basketball and men's basketball. And we haven't been too hot in football lately, but lately we're actually on the come up in that aspect too.
Awesome.
So Millikin is definitely on the rise for Division III. So.
Yeah, that's outstanding now. And I think Millikin has a national champion as well, right? Is that right? Ryan Burt's, Coach Burt's son?
Yep, Braden Burt.
Burt,
real good buddy of mine. He won 2. Could have possibly won 3 if COVID didn't happen. Took it away from him. But
I didn't know he won 2.
Awesome guy. We always joke around about competing afterwards. Since I'm done competing, he's done competing, at least for the college level. We're like, you know what? We're going to be those rich friends. We're going to go start our own business. And we're going to do all these things. And that's how we'll compete from now on. So, yeah, Braden's a really good guy. I like to hang around him. We kind of push each other. You know, we always bounce ideas off each other's heads and just see what life has in store for us. So,
I'm going to tell you what, you picked a great company to come to work for. So Dave Tyrolt, of course, is a good friend of mine. We went to high school together. And my neighbor, they're on North Monroe Street, so not too far away from us. And I think there's more money coming out of those smokestacks at the asphalt plant than there is our dry cleaning plant.
I don't know. We don't have a studio.
But so Dave is a good friend, and the culture that he's created there, taking over from his dad, Bernie Neighbor, I'm just, looking from afar is obviously very, very, very impressive, and I always love talking business with you. And it's been a while since I've seen you, so would you mind just sharing a little bit about Dunn Company and some of maybe the communities or markets you're working in that I wouldn't even know about, because I live over here in Springfield now, so I haven't seen you a little bit, and maybe some of the different business lines that maybe are newer to Dunn that I wouldn't even know about.
So in general, we've got two main groups of service lines, and one is asphalt paving, pavement maintenance, crack filling and sealing, oil and chip, that pavement construction, and we do that kind of work in and around our home market in Decatur, and we work within reach of our asphalt plant there. And then we do rotomilling, which is grinding off a layer of pavement, soil stabilization, where you're fixing up a subgrade to put a pavement or a building on. We do full depth pavement reclamation.
Okay, now tell us about that.
What is that? Chew up and remix an additive into an existing roadbed to improve it structurally.
Now, as I remember, was that a county type? Did you do a lot of county roads like that, or
we do? So we do a lot of county roads. There's a lot of that goes on in the wind farm sector to upgrade roads as part of wind farm construction, solar farm construction. So if you have a farm to market road that's been there for 100 years and they need to upgrade it, that's a way to make a structural improvement in that road. And then we do cold in-place recycling, which is similar to full depth reclamation, except you're working in the top layers. And when you chew up and remix that, then you lay it with a paver, just like you would lay an asphalt road, and then that makes a good intermediate layer that gets a wearing course on top of it. And so rotomilling, stabilization, reclamation, and recycling we do regionally. We've gotten out, as far east as Virginia, as far west as western Minnesota. We work in Tennessee, Michigan. So we work regionally. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, a little bit Missouri, a little bit Wisconsin.
So that's a bigger footprint than I would have imagined. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So a lot of that's done then through municipalities, counties. Or you act as a subcontractor for somebody else? I'm just really curious about how your business is structured.
Some of that work is done. We'll do as a prime contractor. A lot of that work we do as a subcontractor, and we're working for agencies from state departments of transportation to counties, municipalities. So there's a variety there, and then there's a lot of that work that's done in the private sector. So somebody's going to build a big warehouse, and they need to fix up the site before they can put a big warehouse on it. Or wind farms. We're working on public roads, and but we're working. That's really kind of more the private sector because it's a private developer developing that site. So
are wind farms still a deal? Are they still?
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, is the cold in place recycling? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is that something that it was driven by the like the equipment manufacturers or by the service providers, or because that's a fairly new technology, isn't it?
Yeah. That process in general has been around for a long time. We've had a good partnership with an equipment manufacturer, and we went to them in 2006 and said, "Hey, you've got all of these components on all these different pieces of equipment. What would happen if you put it all together and put it in one piece of equipment to do cold in place recycling?" And at that point, they didn't have the engineering resources to dedicate to that, but 3 years later they did. And so we ran the prototype machine for them. That was the first one of those units in the U.S. and bought the first production unit. And so now we run a few of those units. And
awesome.
Well,
Well, give us the history of Dunn Company. when it started, who started it.
Yeah. Well, we've got some stuff kind of like the art that you have up in here. It goes back a long way.
Yeah.
The company started in 1939
Okay.
as a retail coal yard. There was a family in Decatur. It was the Beggs family, and David Beggs II was partners in. David Beggs I, was partners in the Macon County coal mine.
Okay.
His son, David Beggs II, started Dunn Company as a retail coal yard, but they needed to do something in the summertime because the coal business, you're generating heat.
Sure.
Well, what do you do when you don't need to generate a lot of heat? So they were in the asphalt business.
Okay.
David Beggs III was a fraternity brother of my dad's at Millikin, another Millikin tie.
Yep.
And after graduation, they had gone their separate ways, and David was in education. And my dad and David bumped into each other at the Detroit airport, and David was responsible for the family business, and it wasn't flourishing.
Yep.
And my dad and David rekindled the friendship, and my dad asked David asked my dad if my dad wanted to move back to Decatur, buy into the business, and they would be partners.
Yeah.
And so my dad did. He had fond memories of Decatur from the time he was at Millikin. And
Where's your dad from originally?
he's originally from Lyons, Illinois, kind of on the south suburbs.
Okay. Yeah, I did not know that.
And he had grown up, around the construction industry.
Yeah.
So my dad moves our family to Decatur in 1966. There were 5 kids on the way to 7. And so a year later, David Beggs died in a car crash.
Oh, wow.
And so my dad bought the rest of the business from the Beggs family.
Okay.
And my dad had worked with Bernie Neighbor. Bernie was in Cincinnati, and my dad asked Bernie if he wanted to come in and be a partner with him. And
Okay.
so Bernie moved to Decatur in 1967, and the two of them ran the business since then.
I did not know that history. That's awesome.
Yeah,
and when did you
man.
come back to work with your dad?
So I grew up working in the business from the time I was a kid, and then went away to school and worked in Indiana for a couple of years after school, and I moved back to Decatur in 1994.
Okay.
And started full time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then I had when we were in Indy, we bumped into George.
I was just going to mention that.
And,
Yeah.
and so there's another generation coming on board, and he starts here, I think, fairly soon.
Next Monday's his first day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
We were
That's
over there
awesome.
visiting another restoration company and literally just bumped into him.
Yeah, and Matt and him are good buddies, and man, he's a sharp young man. I'm excited.
Yeah,
to
I
see
was
where his
impressed.
future-
I had never met him, and
I haven't seen him
very
forever.
impressive.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm excited for him to be back, and it's interesting because he's been away from the business. He worked for the company in the summer times, through high school.
Yeah.
But he was spraying weeds and pressure washing stuff and painting and but after when he started going to college, he wound up having internships through college and has been working in the state of Indiana for the last couple of years after school. So it's really been a while since George has been around the business. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having him come back and
he's running some sizable projects, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about what he's doing now.
So he works for a company. He was working for a company that develops and builds commercial real estate, including multifamily, apartment complexes.
Yeah.
And the way the company is structured is kind of interesting. They develop the projects and they hire their sister company to build them. Mm-hmm. And he was working as kind of an owner's rep on the development side, interacting with the construction side. Uh-huh. So he's been on these big multifamily projects all over the country and traveling around quite a bit. So he's been in the industry.
Gotcha.
No.
Cool. Yeah, and it's neat. You're working with Matt, and another generation in your business, and
Matt finally has kind of gotten really interested in the business, has really come a long way under Chris's mentorship, and he talks a lot about having conversations with George, and kind of compare notes, if you will. So it is great.
Yeah.
Because they grew up from when they were kids, and we were neighbors, and we had a pond across. One funny story about George, I'll never forget this. I'd come home from work and he'd be in his cargo shorts and covered in mud and shooting baskets, and you're like, hey, Mr. Wike, how's your day? He's always a real personable kid, and always very, very friendly and polite. And one day in particular, I could see that his cargo shorts were moving around. I'm like, well, that's weird. And he's like, I said, how'd you get muddy? He goes, oh, I fell in the pond. We're catching snakes today. And I said, oh, that's awesome, George. And I said, he goes, you want to see one? I'm like, no, I'm good. He goes, no, I want to show you. So he like reaches in his pocket and, he's like, oh man, this, snake's biting him. And he's got 3 snakes in his pocket, which was normal. Wouldn't you agree? For him?
He was always an animal guy.
That's awesome. I mean, he might have had a turtle in his back pocket, or I don't know. But he was, that was just a funny story. But yeah, so the boys were growing up since they were young and had a lot of great stories.
Oh yeah. Construction projects. They'd go dumpster diving in the neighborhood. They were building a new house, and they'd go dive in the dumpster.
Oh yeah.
Steal scrap lumber out of the dumpster and build.
Remember
stuff.
when I got the call from Steve Lewis?
Yeah.
So Steve Lewis had developed a lot of the area that we lived in, and Matt decides he's going to steal a roll of Tyvek wrap to build his fort with George. And I get a call real serious, like he's going to be a felon. And so I said, all right, well, listen, I'm going to pick Matt up from school. Cindy Lewis, I think Cindy called me.
Cindy called.
I said, well, let's scare the daylights out of him. He needs to be taught that you can't steal construction supplies from building. So I picked him up and took him to S.A. Lewis. And I'm like, Steve's in there and Cindy. And I mean, scared the daylight. I think that was the last roll of Tyvek that he stole, hopefully.
Well, yes. Right. So this house was under construction, and they delivered some supplies to the job site, and they dropped this roll of Tyvek off, and it was right next to the dumpster.
Yeah.
And the boys, they've been looting the dumpster, so they grabbed this roll of Tyvek, and they're carrying it down the block, and the superintendent on the site, rolls down the block, and it's like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're just going to build a fort. They didn't really know what they were doing was wrong. And the guy's like, well, what are your names? And they're like, oh, it's George Tyrolt and that one.
We live right over there.
Yeah, we were right over here. So I got this phone call, Dave. This is the kind of call I didn't like to make, and probably you don't like receiving. But George was stealing some stuff from but they were great about it, and the boys apologized. And,
that's a good story.
Yeah,
I love it.
So Jordan, tell us what you're going to be doing with Dunn Company.
So I signed on as an entry-level project manager, which is pretty cool.
And you were an intern over the last year, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Started in the summertime as an intern, and kind of my dream job as a project manager. And David gave me the contract to sign. That's awesome. It was pretty cool. But things I'll be doing. Kind of just managing the personnel coming to each site that I'm assigned, or a project that I'm assigned. Manage the personnel, the equipment that we need to line up the supplies we need. Whether we're getting cement from a company or even just lining up asphalt, possibly. Coming from our own plant. So just things like that, managing time sheets and stuff like that. Just an overall managerial type job. So
did you take an assessment or anything, or how did you know you wanted to be outdoors and maybe be a project manager, or was it a connection with Dunn Company and Millikin? Yeah, how did you?
So I found out about Dunn Company because there's a guy named my teammate Connor Morganson, whose dad is.
He works
DJ.
with you.
His dad's DJ Morganson.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, really great guy.
Yeah,
and so anytime I talk to anybody, especially someone older than me with experience, I tell them exactly what I want to do.
Sure.
And I had talked to Coach Burt, and Coach Burt was like, Connor's dad is at Dunn Company doing this. I was like, oh, yeah. And so I reached out to him, and I talked to Connor about it a little bit, and they offered me an internship, so I took
that
it.
is terrific.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and you'd had some experience in the summers before.
So before I was at a concrete construction company back in Missouri. It was called S&A Equipment and Builders, and I just liked doing the work that I was doing. I was a laborer.
Sure.
We did a bunch of roads, parking lots. We built the roundabout. That was pretty cool, and was a lot of money in it, and I had no idea the money in construction. No idea at all. Yeah. Just from growing up with my dad, he always had us working on his rental properties, and I like doing that a fair amount, but I never got paid to do it. That was free labor.
You grew up in the family business.
I remember those days.
Yeah, so
I think Matt's still the lowest paid production worker.
right. Yeah,
No nepotism.
but I kind of fell in love with it, and things just kind of worked out for me. So I never really took any assessments or anything. I just knew that I wanted to be something to do with hands-on type stuff. So I kind of fell into it. So
that's
well, terrific. I can promise you, your all your work ethic and time spent in the gym and on the wrestling mat will take you a long ways. Brad and I talk a lot about having a locker room mentality. And there's a certain frame of mind and mental toughness that I think gets developed around sports that you really will carry with you all of your life and will have a huge influence on the people around you, I suspect. So
we always say as fun as winning is, and winning is a core value of our company, but we despise losing, right? I mean, just that whole, whether it's losing on a project, not bringing the numbers in, you learn from your mistakes, but it's, I don't know. I think that's developed through sports, and whether it's team sports or even individual sports, most notably individual, because I mean, you can't point your finger at anybody, right? I mean,
one of his teammates is starting with us too.
That's cool.
And to see the work ethic these guys have, and how much of their heart and soul they put into what they do. I hadn't been around wrestling a whole lot. Right. Dan Butler had cursed me for saying that, but I hadn't been around wrestling a whole lot and got to go watch these guys wrestle. And it's like, wow.
I know.
It's unbelievable. I've never been around it either.
I know.
I've just watched it as a spectator from time to time. And it has to be, in my limited, knowledge of it, just watching the most intense sport ever. I mean, football, is like, the play lasts a few seconds and then you're back in the huddle for 25 or whatever it is and back. It is unbelievable the intensity with which you guys do your thing.
7 minutes.
Well, and it's the longest 7 minutes out there. I mean, and even in kids club, I think maybe the periods were a minute and a half or a minute. It's the longest minute. It feels like 20 minutes, because when your kid's on the mat. But even watching you at the regionals, it's like, man, those butterflies came back because, man, there's just, you know what I mean? I was just nervous because I wanted you to win and advance and move forward. But it's an intense sport, that's for sure. So
and his teammate Zach, he is just constant motion. Just doesn't want to sit still. Just always wants to be going.
I love it.
And he did really well.
He ended up he's an All-American this year. I think he plays 5th. And
what weight was he?
Really awesome kid. 125.
We watched him.
He started us off every duel. So
remind me, what'd you wrestle at?
I wrestled at 141.
141.
What's your walk around weight like now that you're not in season?
Not in season. I probably walk around at like 158.
Okay.
Just around there. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Can you give me any tips to a 60-year-old guy or almost 60 how to cut some weight?
I can. You want me to help you?
I got a weight problem. Can't wait to eat.
And the cocktails we have when we're trying to figure something out. No. So Dave, tell us about maybe some of the areas you're working. Is there anything big going on in like the Decatur area or the region, like new construction or commercial development or any,
So last year there was a nice project to build a FedEx facility. And in fact, there's a FedEx facility built in Springfield as well. And, so we participated on that project. And then there's quite a bit of wind energy going on in the central part of the state. We've got a couple of nice-sized projects in the state of Indiana that combine a few of the different lines of business that we perform. We've got a decent backlog to start the season with. So that's all good stuff.
That is nice, yeah. So is the season starting off like as far as early or right on time or?
different kinds of work we do start up at different times of the year.
Okay.
So today today's the first day where we're producing asphalt.
Okay, cool.
And we're paving in our facility today.
Okay, yeah, nice.
That way they say the blacksmith's children eat with wooden spoons. Well, we needed some paving work done at our place, so we're doing some of that today.
I like it.
But the soil stabilization business, a lot of times we're helping a wet site so that they can get around on the site and keep a construction project moving. So we've been doing some of that work for a number of weeks now. So things kind of ramp into the season, and then at the end of the year, things kind of ramp down.
Okay.
So
yeah. So I know that just for some of the local listeners and some of the folks we know, they know Matt Rowland, of course, and then Jim Bruner, or Jim Jr., and so UCM and then, of course, Rowland Machinery. What's the connection with Dunn Company and, say, Rowland Machinery, and then maybe even UCM? Do you work with those folks? Or
I was going to ask you about UCM a little while ago.
Yeah, so Rowland Machinery is we buy more equipment from Rowland than we do from any other supplier.
Okay.
They represent a company that makes pavers, rollers, soil stabilizers. They're that's the company that makes the recyclers.
Yeah.
So we do a lot with those guys, and they're really a first class organization. Really do a nice job. And then Altorfer, they're Caterpillar dealer here indicated. We do, we work with them. We get stuff from them as well.
Sure.
United Contractors Midwest, so they're the largest downstate paving, road, bridge, dirt contractor, and so we'll compete with them. In our focus is really kind of on the small to mid-size segment of the asphalt business.
Sure.
We've got a single asphalt plant located right in the middle of Decatur, and so we're pretty well situated to focus on that kind of work. Their focus tends to be on larger mainline projects.
Gotcha.
But in the middle of the market, that's where we'll overlap. So we'll compete with them on some projects.
Yep.
But we work for them as a subcontractor a lot too. So we'll do stabilization work for them, or we'll do cold in place recycling for them. So we work for them as a subcontractor a lot. So it's kind of interesting to have a relationship,
compete, but also work together.
Where you compete, but and then on some other stuff we wind up working together.
I love it. That's awesome.
You were saying a little more about the seasonal nature, if you don't mind, of your business.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that. I mean, we're very weather driven in our water restoration work, and so
we love the rain in the spring, but I'm sure he doesn't.
Yeah, you don't like it, but we want them.
Well, that's interesting because when there's a wet site, we can go in and dry down soil. That's one of the things that soil stabilization does.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that generates opportunities for us.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want it to rain everywhere but Decatur, because I want to be paving in Decatur, but I want to be stabilized in other places. So.
Interesting.
We're pretty seasonal, and that's one of the things that our diversification has allowed. It kind of lengthens out the season a little bit because there's some of our work is really weather sensitive, some of it's less weather sensitive. So, talking about ramping up into the season and ramping down, some of those service lines that are a little less weather sensitive, they can go more of the year. But we also have a number of months where money's going out the door and nothing's coming in.
Yeah, that's why.
I'm wringing my hands, nervous. Oh my gosh, when are we going to get started? And with you guys too, with the
we've had a couple of years. If you have back-to-back, for us anyways, back-to-back dry years or warm winters with no broken pipes, that really affects our cash flow for sure. And lots of sleepless nights, trying to worry about making payroll. But fortunately, we haven't had that in a while. Speaking of that, how did our business, did PPP, not PPP money, but did the whole COVID thing affect you guys at all in a negative way, or were you guys kind of smooth sailing through all that?
So with construction being an essential business, we didn't need to shut down. Watching the way that COVID was developing, we were really worried, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, particularly to private sector projects.
Sure.
And so fortunately there wasn't projects were far enough along in their development that there wasn't a huge disruption.
Yep.
So that turned out great, and I was worried that there was going to be kind of a lag because with the 08-09 financial crisis, projects were already far enough along that they continued, but then there was a point when that stuff kind of dropped off the table.
Yeah.
So we were really watching things closely and wondering, okay, what's going to be the impact on our business? And we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about what the impacts were going to be, and some sleepless nights worried about it, and all the health issues and all of that, and then kind of this compounding issue of what's going to happen to the business. But fortunately, it didn't have a huge negative impact on us.
Yeah,
so,
good.
Yeah,
Good
how about
deal.
you guys?
It really hurt our dry cleaning business for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, we're down, we're half the revenue we were prior to COVID. And it slowly started to decline prior to that, though, just because a lot of people are more casual, I'd say workplace casual. There's less people wearing ties and things like that. But certainly when the events stopped, we do a lot of, events for weddings and wedding dresses. And, when people, it just seems like people are not entertaining as much either, you know. But yeah, COVID definitely hit us hard on that. Now, we're fortunate because on the fire restoration side of our business, we do garments, draperies and area rugs and things. We're kind of hanging in there, but that side of the business got hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
Everything else is, I'd say, back to pre-COVID numbers.
Yeah.
So we have, as you guys know, multiple lines. So that's helped to be diversified.
Yeah.
So even though dry cleaning is way off, and Springfield, we came over to Springfield because we did see kind of a lot of our customers moved out of Decatur. Back when ADM sent some folks to Chicago, and a lot of our retail, we call our retail customers, which would be dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, like in-home services.
Yep.
When we started doing business and moving over to Springfield, that's kind of helped shore up some of the business we lost with some of the changes in Decatur, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah.
How many employees do you guys have?
We'll in the wintertime we're at about 25, and then over the course of the construction season we'll ramp up we'll peak up north of 100. So
a pretty big fluctuation.
yeah.
What's your typical day look like? Is there a typical day? Maybe that's a better question.
Good question. Yeah.
Well, and
As a leader of the company,
so they I'll come in and I'll kind of check to get the lay of the land and go through emails and do all that kind of stuff. Kind of your regular kind of getting yourself oriented for the day, figure out what's going on. We try to keep a rhythm in the business. So there's a daily huddle that our team has, and so I'll drop in on that now and again, just kind of get a feel for what's going on. We have a weekly huddle where our team spends a little more time together talking about what's going on in the business and planning for the next week. And we have a senior leadership meeting that we do on Thursday mornings, and so we've got kind of this meeting pulse. And then for me personally, I spend time kind of working on some projects and thinking about how to get the business to the next level. So I try to spend time doing that stuff. We just completed an acquisition of some assets from another contractor, and so that took a lot of time this last year, kind of getting that put together and figuring out what it was going to look like, and that took quite a bit more time than I anticipated, but like a lot of things do.
Yeah.
And so now this year, spending some time kind of integrating that. I spend quite a bit of time on some customer interaction stuff, and so yeah, it's I don't know. I guess for me, I don't have, like, I look around at some of my counterparts, and they've really put a lot of structure or a lot of process into their day. I'm envious of that. I don't know if I've lacked the discipline to do it, or if just the nature of the business. I don't know exactly what, but I don't have like a real regular daily rhythm. But I don't know.
I would say that how my approach is: ready, fire, aim. David's more of a ready, aim, fire, and if there's probably either an acquisition or a change in a process or a new market or something that he's getting into, it will have been well thought out. He's quite a bit more cerebral than I am.
Well, I'm ready, aim.
But all right, pull the trigger out.
Yeah, well thought out though. Well thought out.
Yeah. So sometimes I overthink stuff and kind of ponder my navel and what about this and what about that.
I do love what you were talking about the rhythm you've created through your huddles and your meetings at various levels throughout the company. Any organization I've ever been a part of that is run well seems to have a rhythm amongst their people that happen through. Maybe it's a 5-minute huddle with your production staff, whatever those look like.
Yeah. Are you working with anybody? Are you working with anybody now, like as far as a facilitator?
Yeah, that helps you to implement those.
But we did. We started using a lot of this, a lot of the EOS processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did the Great Game of Business together, and Rockefeller Habits and a bunch of different things that we tried over the years. And what I found...
Now, how closely tied... I feel like EOS and Rockefeller are somewhat similar, or no?
Yeah, for me, what EOS did is it took a lot of the components of the Great Game of Business. It took stuff from the Rockefeller Habits. Yeah. It took stuff from 7 Habits. It took a lot of those things and kind of made it into maybe a more cohesive... kind of overall system that took elements from all those different things, and that's what was useful for me. And I say that I haven't been great about being so structured in my own day, because what I find if I don't have a structure or a process in place, it's easy for me to drift away. Yeah. And so that's why putting some processes like EOS in place, that kind of helps keep me between the fence rows a little bit. And so but
makes sense.
That's been good for us. You guys doing EOS or?
We were doing Rockefeller, and we still have we still do forecasting, and we do our weekly huddles, and we talk about core values a lot. But as far as the really focus on the 60-90 day rocks, and we've gotten away from that. But we still have a rhythm within our organization. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. With the forecasting meeting that happens every other week, and talking about what's going on inside the business, and then our project managers with their teams of people each morning before they head out. And then we've started doing, I don't know what it's been, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, with our division leaders and emerging leaders in the company, a weekly kind of leadership development time every Tuesday morning. That has worked well. I think it's worked pretty well for us.
Our business has really been through a lot of stress and change and restructuring, and since our good friend Todd passed, and then bringing Chris on, so we're kind of reorganizing everything, if you will, and trying to figure out, okay, what's the next path for us. But we've had a lot going on, and we've still focused on providing great service for our folks and getting things done and making sure that didn't but it's trying to build that foundation again. How small business can be, or medium-sized businesses. I mean, just when you think you got it figured out, there's
and don't say it out loud that you haven't figured out.
And I think that's one of the challenges, because in a smaller organization, you spend a lot of time on customer-facing stuff or revenue-producing stuff, and sometimes it's hard to focus on the infrastructure inside the company that makes all those things possible. And so that's always kind of the balance or the struggle, trying to sort some of that stuff out. Like Jordan talks a lot about process, and so as we grow, like more of that process becomes important to us, and developing that skill set within the organization. Because back in the day, you kind of ham and egg it. Everybody pitches in, you figure stuff out. But as an organization grows or things become more complex, that's where process starts to really shine.
Do you guys got a process down with like all your project managers or whatnot, or you guys, do they just go out with their team and figure things out, or?
Well, we're in the middle of developing a more structured process for the training, but we invest a ton of money, I feel like, or resources in, external training, sending them to get certified, and all, like, whether it's mold, trauma scene, fire, water, carpet cleaning, just to make sure that we have the highest levels of certification. But then there's a lot of internal training as well, which is just on the job.
Yeah, and I was going to say I've only been here, year and a half or so. One of the things I've noticed is as we bring new folks on, new technicians, that they'll do a lot of learning in the field, a lot of hands-on, on-the-job training, and then when they get to a certain point, more external training so they can get the appropriate certifications under their belt and so on and so forth, and then move from being a technician, hopefully, to somebody who can lead a project and eventually become a project manager.
Yeah. So, like, even when Chris started, he didn't have a formalized job description. Me, that's great leadership, right? Just start with a blank job description.
What's it going to look like?
And figure out, what needs fixed. Okay, I've probably screwed enough stuff around. But the one thing, we got him certified in all lines of business, so that, if we ever need, because we're a fairly small business, and, we, like this winter, we had those broken pipes. Well, we had to act like a $8 million company when we only had the resources of, say, a $6 million company. But a guy like Chris now has all the certifications. He's done the on-the-job training, and now he can go out and run projects, even though his role really is more in business development and, organizing the team. But we try and get everybody cross-trained. I mean, it wouldn't be uncommon to have a Jay Woodrum who's in charge of this kind of stuff, or social media or whatever, out if we need him to be on a job site, because he knows enough to make sure that we, live the core values to do a good job. So. Yeah. But ask David, because I think it's really pertinent with Jordan here, that question you asked.
I was just getting ready to ask it before you asked about process.
This sounds like a stumper.
No, it's not. So as a guy who's been in business you grew up in the business as a family business, but who's, been doing your thing for many years now. I'm not going to put an age on you or ask you your age, but you've been leading a company for quite some time. If you were able to look back and talk to yourself when you were 20 years younger, what advice would you give yourself? Because that would be great advice for a guy like Jordan who's just coming into the business. Kind of the lessons learned over the last 20 or 30 years that you wish you knew when you were Jordan's age.
Yeah, well, and we just talked about some of the stuff this morning. We got to Springfield a little early, and we went and got a cup of coffee, and we're sitting in the place where we got the coffee, and we noticed a bunch of things going on inside this establishment. Somebody had spilled something on the floor, and somebody took a wad of paper towels and just kind of threw it on the spill, but didn't clean it up. And the cash register didn't have any cash register tape. And there's things beeping in the background, and nobody took the time to go over and push the button and stop the beeping. And and so, like, looking at that stuff, we were talking about, and Jordan had experience working in a restaurant. Just the ability to, like, raise your hand and be willing to try new things and learn things and say, hey, I'll help out. And those kinds of things really are invaluable. And what I told my kids, don't worry about title, don't worry about the money, don't worry about a job description. Go someplace where you're in an organization where they're invested in your success. They don't feel threatened by your growth. In fact, they encourage it. And the money and the job description and the responsibilities, those things will all take care of themselves. So just raise your hand, be a sponge, learn as much as you can, and pitch in. So.
I mean, David, he kind of said it. He, when he talks to me, he kind of talks to me like he's talking to, Frank or Matt or Anna. He just talks to them talk to me as I was one of them. And he always gives me a ton of advice and stuff about different things. And so he's not, like, BS when he's saying, like, these type of things. And his office is always open. Like, if I got a question about something, he's answer it honestly and make sure I get the answer I need, or not really, if it's not something I want, he'll still give me like the true answer. Like, doesn't really care. He wants to make sure that I grow as an individual, and that's part of the reason why I signed on to him and not the other companies I had offers from, because I felt like a real personal relationship, and his want for me to grow and develop as a businessman. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you picked the right company.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love what you just described about your culture.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot like the culture here, not worrying about titles and I mean, there's jobs that have to be done.
Yeah.
But if everybody's willing to raise their hand and everybody's willing to carry their own weight and then carry a little bit extra when it's necessary, that's how you grow, and that's how you advance, and that's how you go far, and that's what makes a great culture and a great company. And I would say that Brad and the folks who've been here for years have built that kind of environment here. And then usually folks who don't fit in that, they kind of work their way out of the system, if you will, because they may not be the kind who like to raise their hand and help carry a little bit extra of the load.
Well, you know, over the years too, like David's got me involved in. It's been a while because, you know, like I said, I moved over here to Springfield, but like Imagine 21, that had a huge impact on our business. You know, like even with like Todd, he had his affirmation card. Remember that?
Yeah.
When Lou Tice came through and that whole thing. And you know, I'd say David Tyrolt's one of the best teachers. There's leaders that lead, but he teaches. You know what I mean? You're, and I know that he's got guys that work for him that probably have the same traits. So kudos to you. So
for sure.
Well, that was one of the neat things about the Great Game of Business and some other stuff. You know, back when we were doing a lot of that together, we had the same consultant, Jack O'Reilly. He's a great guy.
Great guy.
You introduced me to Jack.
Yeah.
Jack really helped our business, and then he had a group of clients, and we would get together a couple times a year and go have dinner. And we were all in different industries. Mm-hmm. None of us were competing. None of us had the same issues exactly that we were facing, but we got to compare notes and
it was very helpful.
And so for like people coming up in a business, to find a group of peers that you can bounce stuff off of and share war stories and cry on each other's shoulder a little bit, and you know that all of that stuff is really helpful. And you know, I think about all the good things. You know, Tony Liberatore, you introduced me to Tony. You introduced me to Jack. You introduced me to Rockefeller Habits. Like all of that stuff.
I forgot about all that. But, you know, it's so interesting because even though we are all in different businesses, we all share the same
it's all the same
issues,
stuff.
you know, but just different. Different, and a lot of them have to do with people.
Yeah, and those I was just going to say, those relationships are invaluable.
Yeah.
The longer I live, the more I'm convinced that every good thing that happens personally and professionally in our lives always revolves around those relationships with people. Always.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about running. I mean, you got me involved in that. And for, you know, we were inseparable for a couple of years where, you know, we were together 24/7, but all of that experience, that's something you brought into not only my life but my family's life. We had such a great time.
That was a lot of fun. And you know, because on a 3-hour run you got to find stuff to talk about, you know.
That's right.
You just can't talk about how
I'm
miserable
doing a
you are.
3-hour run, I'm just trying to breathe.
Well, listen, you've probably got plenty to do, fellas. Thank you so much for joining us
thanks.
today.
It's been great.
Been a real really honored to have you both here. And good luck over there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Thanks a bunch, guys. I appreciate it a lot.
You.
And thanks to Jay for setting all this up. So
you bet. Thank you.